welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all really well. You would have just seen a close-up of the exciting thing that I'm going to be talking to you about today. The reason why I'm sitting all the way over here is because I'm going to be inserting some pictures around here which will give you a better insight of what I'm talking about. If you haven't already guessed, we're going to be talking about the paneling that is on the wall behind me. I've been working on this paneling for the last week, and if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen that I have been extremely busy at trying to get this done, and I am literally over the moon with the results. I've had so much lovely feedback on my Instagram, and so many of you have been asking me questions all about it and have been telling me how you want to try and do it yourself. So I thought I would put a video together where I talk you through step by step the process and show you pictures that I've put together while I have been doing it to give you a better idea of what you will need and how you can create this look. So I hope you really enjoy this video. I do apologise, today is extremely windy and we are sitting in the kitchen and the wind is howling against the doors. So I really hope you can hear me, but without further ado, let's get stuck into it. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to insert a screen now which is going to tell you exactly what it is that you are going to need in order to create this paneling look. Now you've got your list of equipment, you are ready to start paneling. And step one involves prepping your wall. So it's really important that your wall is lovely and smooth. You're going to be sticking MDF onto the wall. So if you can see the panels here behind me, like the squares, they're actually your wall, and then you've stuck the MDF on top of it. So you need to make sure that your wall is really smooth because you are going to see a lot of it once the wall is completed. So we were quite lucky because we live in a new build, as you know. The walls were lovely and smooth already, but if you live in a house which is perhaps slightly older, just make sure that the walls are smooth by running your hand over it or using a spirit level, and if there are any dents or bumps or anything like that, you can just sand them back and you can pop some filler in and just get that wall looking really lovely and fresh. Step two is measuring your wall and having your MDF cut. This is probably the trickiest part out of all of it. It involves a lot of maths and equations, and that's something that I'm not very strong at, but even I was able to do this on my own, so I was really proud of myself actually. So the way that I did it, and I find it is the way that works best, is I measured the height and then I measured the width, and then I thought about how I wanted my paneling to look. How thick did I want the actual panels to be? So I decided I wanted them to be 10 centimeters, and so I had to take that into my equation. And I also then had to work out how many panels I wanted there to be on the wall as well. The way I did that was I sort of thought, oh, what looks nice? And I quite like odd numbers, so I went for an odd number going across. I knew that 3 was not going to be enough, and I knew that 7 was going to be too many, so I opted for 5. Then when I was measuring, I worked out that the width of the wall was actually a lot longer than the height, so I knew I couldn't fit 5 going down, so I just opted for 1 less and went for 4, and it worked out really well. So once you've worked out your measurements, you then need to start thinking about how you're going to have your pieces cut. So you can actually go to your local timber merchants or B&Q and they will cut these for you. But it is really handy to go there with an idea in mind of how wide you want these pieces to be. So we found actually that MDF doesn't come in a sheet that's wide enough to do the entire length, so we had to have each tiny piece cut. So I needed to work out how many of those I needed. The height never changed, it was only the width ones that I really needed cutting. So I asked my timber merchants to cut my height ones first, so I needed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the height, and they all came in long strips. And then I think I needed something like, I want to say 25 of the smaller pieces, and that's actually the harder part to work out, like how wide they need to be. So the way to do that is to measure your width the whole way across And then you know now you're going to be having 5 across. So you know that you're going to need 6, you're going to have 6 strips going down, and each of those are going to be 10 centimeters. So if you take your width and you then minus the 60 centimeters, which comes to each panel, that will total a new width for you. And then you need to divide that number by how many panels there are. So there are 5 going across, so I divided it by 5, and I think that roughly came to around sort of like 42 centimeters or something like that. So I really hope that that makes sense. That is the trickier part, but if you are having any problems with that, please just message me on Instagram or write a comment below and I can try and explain that to you in more detail. But I will also insert the video here with a bit more information about how to do it. You can use any size, like thickness of MDF that you would like. I went for 12 mil because I found that that was actually the thickness of my skirting board, and it worked really, really nicely, and it looks good. It shouldn't be too expensive either. We actually managed to get all of the paneling cut from one piece of MDF, so it's really not too expensive. So step 3 is when you are going to start thinking about putting your MDF onto the wall. What we did to start with was we laid out a sort of like a mock piece on the floor, and we measured every single piece. So we lay down the length and then we put the width ones next to it, making sure that we got the gap right in between so that it was all even. They are roughly about squares, but I think there's maybe like a centimetre or 0.5 centimetres out on each one, but it's hardly noticeable. So when this was all laid out on the floor, you can see we actually then marked each point so that when we stuck that first piece of MDF onto the wall, we then had a guide to work with. Now, some people suggest doing your frame entirely first, so doing all the way across and then down and all the way around. But like I said before, our situation was slightly different in that the MDF sheets didn't actually come in the size of the width all the way, so we had to have each bit cut. But we didn't find that to be a problem actually. It worked out fine for us. So we knew we wanted to start in the far corner over there, so we got our first piece of MDF and we applied lots of glue. So you can use No More Nails, there's Gorilla Glue, there's lots of different really strong wood glues that you can use. And we applied that in a zigzag motion across the back of the MDF, and then we secured it onto the wall with a really strong pressure. We also held up a spirit level just to make sure that this was all nice and straight. Once this first piece of wood was secure, it was then as easy as just making up a jigsaw puzzle. You were then able to put in the width pieces, and then we just attached on another length, and then we did the width pieces, and it just all kind of came together as you can see in the video. So step 4, now that all of your pieces are stuck to the wall, your next job is to caulk it. Caulking is actually a really essential part of the paneling. It gives a really nice finishing touch. So what you need to do is go around each individual square with the caulk, and that will just give a lovely finish inside. After you've done all your caulking, which will really make the difference if you take your time, you can move on to step 5. So step 5 is then filling in any holes. So we found there was quite a lot of little joins between the wood where they would meet together. Despite being cut really straight, there was still a slight tiny gap. I was quite keen for it to have a really fluid finish. I got some filler and just put that in the holes, and then I left the filler and the caulk to dry overnight. If you check the packaging on the products that you're using, they normally advise you on how long you can leave them to dry. Some suggest overnight, some a couple of days, or some might even say a couple of hours depending on what you're using. But I do suggest leaving it for a little bit longer, because then you can be really sure that it's dry, as your next step is going to be painting, so you want to make sure nothing is going to affect the paint. I also need to add in here that after the filler is dry, you will need to sand it down. So just spend some time sanding the filler down and making it really smooth and in line with the MDF sheets. So step 6 is where things really start to come to life, and it was one of my most favorite things to do. It was priming. So I just used a normal wood primer. It came in a white finish. You can buy things like that from B&Q. I think they cost around like £9 or £10. And you then just need to apply this to the wood. So I applied 2 coats of wood primer, and I made sure that it was fully dry before I applied the second coat. You really need the wood to be as white as possible, so that when it comes to painting on your colour, none of the darkness of the wood comes through. Something to try and remember to do is not to let your primer drip. I used a kind of larger brush to do the bigger panels, but then when it came to doing the inner parts of it, I used a thinner brush because I found that otherwise the primer dripped quite a lot. So I just really took my time and made sure that there was no drips, and afterwards I went round again on all of the larger sheets with a brush just to kind of smooth it over. The brush didn't actually have any paint on it, so it was really just to make sure that there was no drips. So your final step is step 7, and step 7 is when you get to paint your wall in the colour that you have chosen. So the colour that I chose was Farrow & Ball Cornforth White, and on my Instagram I was explaining to everybody that I love Farrow & Ball colours, but I really dislike the price tag. So I always have my Farrow & Ball colour matched at Valspar in B&Q. It will come in one of their Valspar tubs, and we only used 1 litre to do that wall, so that was all we need. In fact, I think I've got about a quarter of it left, so that was enough for us, and actually that allowed me to paint all of the inner parts as well, so I painted the entire wall with 2 coats, and we still have some left over. I'll actually insert a picture here of how good the Farrow & Ball colour match is at Valspar. You do need to make sure you use the old Farrow & Ball colour chart, as the new one doesn't let you do the colour match as well, but your B&Q will probably have a copy of one of those. So once it's all painted and you've put on 2 coats, just leave it to dry and then you are done. You may notice afterwards there are a couple of like little bits that you might not have noticed when you were before you painted, so little bits that might need extra filling or little bits that might just need smoothing over, but that's okay. You can just sand them back and then you can just repaint that part again. So I'm really pleased with the results. It didn't take much time at all. Like I said, I kind of was waking up early in the morning and putting on the paint, and my stepdad put this on the wall within about 2 hours, I think it was, so really no time at all. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you do have any questions or you would like to know anything else, please either message me on Instagram or pop me a message in the comments below and I will be sure to get back to you. There are going to be lots more videos coming up with cheap DIY hacks and just general DIY actually. There's going to be Olivia's bedroom makeover, and the bathrooms are also going to be getting a good change too. So stick around. If you are enjoying my content, please make sure you subscribe below and click that bell button so that you don't miss any of my videos. Until next time everybody, bye!